All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Knowles Teaching Fellowship Q&A panel. Thank you so much for joining us. I just have a quick introduction and then I'll pass it off to our fellows. But my name's Cassie, and I'm the marketing associate here at Knowles Teacher Initiative. If there's any questions about like the application process or some other more logistical things, I might be able to answer those. But this is mostly going to be the fellows answering questions about their experience during the program. So tonight we have our three wonderful fellows with us. We have Jasmine, Mackenzie, and Zoe. And they're all gonna introduce themselves in a minute. But thank you so much for being here with us. All right. I'm sure you all know about the program. That's why you're here. You want to hear more about this specific experience. But just to give you a quick overview, the Knowles Teaching Fellowship is a four-year program that supports early career math and science high school teachers in a couple of key ways. We focus on community membership, financial support, personal and professional growth, and mentorship and coaching. So with those in mind, you can go ahead and start putting any of your questions in the Q&A. After each of our three fellows introduces themselves, we'll just jump right into questions. So Zoe, do you want to start us off with introductions?
Sure. I'm Zoe Rothenberger. I'm over at my screen. I'm looking at like what I'm supposed to say. I'm in Central Texas. I teach math. Currently I teach seventh grade math, pre-algebra, and then geometry. I am in my seventh year teaching now, and I was in the 2019 cohort.
Thanks. Okay, Mackenzie?
Hi, I'm Mackenzie. I also am looking at my notes that I wrote down. I currently teach in South Carolina. I teach biology mainly, but I kind of have a unique role this year that I'm doing part-time teaching of bio, and then I'm also a part-time instructional coach for my school. So I'm working a lot with our new teachers, planning a lot of our faculty meetings, a little bit more administrative, than I have been in the past. This will be my fifth year of teaching, fifth year at the same school, and I am still an active fellow. I'm part of the 2021 cohort, and I'm currently in year five, so the final year of the fellowship right now.
Mhm. Thank you. And Jasmine?
I'm Jasmine Moyd. I teach in South Carolina also. This is my third year teaching, similar to Mackenzie, third year at the same school. I teach math, so this year I am Algebra 1 and Geometry. And I am a member of the 2024 cohort, so still the newbies, but this is our second year.
All right, thank you so much. So we'll jump right into our first question. How much of a time commitment is the fellowship, and how do you juggle it with your other responsibilities?
Should we go like in the same order that we kind of went? And then if there's like popcorn, like
Um,
if people want to add in stuff, meaning like,
yeah, we can do that.
okay. So how much of a time commitment? I think it's as much of a time commitment as you want it to be. You really get out what you put in, and like every fellow says that. And I think that I probably didn't think that was true. And then I was in it and I was like, yeah, that's so true. So it really depends on like how much time you want to invest in it. I would say it's hard to put a number on yearly how much time around meetings or like if I'm like actively doing what we call inquiry at Knowles. That can typically take maybe like an hour of work before a meeting and then like an hour and a half meeting over Zoom. And then, but like the majority of my work is done like Knowles stuff, like our Knowles meetings, or was done there. I'm now a senior fellow, so I've branched out. But then if you're like writing grants and doing engaging in other like parts of the fellowship, then you will be working more. But like the work actively for the fellowship, as I described, that's what I experienced.
And only thing I would really add on to that is kind of the same thing. You do kind of get out what you're putting in. I do feel like as you get further into the fellowship, you're able to do a lot of the outside of like Knowles meetings work in your school. So it is supposed to be kind of PLC based or school based. So what I found was successful for me to not feel overwhelmed by it is to actually be able to take my inquiry or my data analysis that I was doing and have my PLC do it with me during our PLC meeting. So there's definitely ways that you can kind of weave your Knowles work into your school day already just to kind of not feel like you have like hours that you're doing outside, but really it's just inquiry meetings. And the meetings like fall, spring, and summer are so fun that never really felt like a time commitment. It was something I genuinely look forward to doing.
Yes, I agree. Our fall meeting is in two, no, our fall meeting is next Thursday and Friday. It got here so quickly. And we had our inquiry meeting yesterday, and like we're all excited to see each other. So the time commitment, it really is. And as a second year, like Zoe said, when you hear, you get out what you put in. It does kind of seem like, like, oh, everybody says that. But it is true. There are some things that may take more time or chapters that may be longer. But the people that you're working with really like we support each other. And so we can always like jigsaw and like break it down. You read this chapter, I read this chapter. Similar to what Mackenzie said, the inquiry work, a lot of it comes from your classroom. So you're doing it anyway. You're just like digging deeper into it with Knowles.
Awesome, thank you. So our next question is, what would you say is the biggest way that the fellowship has improved your teaching practice?
Um, I am a deeply inquisitive person now. I don't think that I was that way, especially about work, before the fellowship. So I ask a lot of questions and I sit and I think a lot about what's happening in my classroom and where I can make positive impact on my students. It's like a new problem to solve that's something I find like valuable. It's not something that I feel like I am being forced to do, but it's truly like because it's the best for my students. But it also like carries into my personal life, and um, I feel like I'm a way more balanced human, and just like being able to understand more about the world around me and things like that. So it's kept me being a learner about who I am and the impact I have on the world and the impact that others have too.
I think for me, it has really given me a lot of confidence in my teaching. Having this Knowles community that's completely separate from my own school community that really is supportive of my ideas, and they do encourage me to dig deeper and have conversations that I wouldn't necessarily have with my colleagues about what are we doing in our classrooms? Why are we doing these things? And even the role I'm in this year, where I am part-time coaching, that came from Knowles. That was my cohort kind of encouraged me to ask my admin to be able to do this, and that's not something I ever would have done on my own. So it is the support, it is the inquiry, digging deeper into stuff, but also just the feeling that you have 25 people in your cohort that are completely behind you with what you're doing, has definitely made me a better teacher, like day to day, because I know I have that support when I go to Knowles.
Same thing. Being around like-minded people, so other teachers who want to learn more about best teaching practices and who are willing to try a new activity, whether it works or not. Um, the reflection piece was new for me. We always say like we reflect after a lesson, but the intentional reflection that we do in Knowles has definitely made me a better teacher. So thinking, if the activity worked, why did it work? What would I do to make it better? Was it high cognitive demand, low cognitive demand? So yeah, I've definitely learned a lot. Even when I look back at old activities that I use, like in my first or second year, I always use like the same lens that we use with like the data analysis. Like, if this worked the first time, what could I do to make it better? Or if it didn't work, how would I reanalyze or restructure the activity and then sharing it with the people in those? It's like judgment free if I make a mistake or whatnot, even in discussion, it's just very open and fluid. And it's like it's a really good environment to be in. So
Awesome, thank you. The next question is, What practices can I focus on in my teaching this year that will best position me for both interview process and the fellowship itself? Do you mean like our interview process or the interview process of finding a job? Sorry, clarifying question on my end for the person who asked this. But you can also, one of the other questions is if you have any tips for people going through the selection process. Okay, and that is what they want for the fellowship interview process. So just to clarify for everyone, there's a couple different phases of the fellowship selection process. It's a little different this year than it has been in the past, but we are evaluating the same basic things. We're gonna have, and when you get further along, there's a group interview and an individual interview. What can someone focus on, or if you have any tips for the selection process?
Um, the Knowles people, the Knowles staff members, and whoever else is involved in selection, they're very good about um, creating opportunities for you to showcase who you are as a teacher. And so it's not really like an interview that you can game. Like there's no secret cheat code of like say this here and do this there. You really have to like be authentically yourself. And if the fellowship is right for you, you're going to be selected. Um, or if you're right for that year, like you may be not the best fit for this year's cohort, but if you can still apply next year, then reapply. But I would just be thinking about like as you are going through the process, things that come up, the core things they're looking for is teacher leadership and content knowledge and your teaching practice. And so if there's times when you see inspiring other teacher leaders, what are they doing that's inspiring you? And where do you think your content knowledge shines? Like what questions do you still have? What are your opportunities for growth? Things like that. But it's been a couple years since I interviewed, so I would love to hear from the newer cohort members.
Just personally thinking back to my group interview, I honestly don't remember my like one-on-one interview at all. I must have been so nervous. But the group interview, my best advice is you really can't game it, but also like it is not a competition. And I think a lot of people go into the group interview thinking like I'm competing for a spot. Sometimes the most valuable thing you can do in that group interview is just listen because it's really awesome people that are in this interview with you, whatever it is that you're going to be doing together or talking about. You don't always need to be talking. Like sometimes it is more valuable to listen to what everyone else is saying and think about like how can I work with these people as a group instead of feeling like how do I make myself stand out or get ahead, and just be able to learn from the people and learn from the interview. I was really nervous going in. I don't really have any advice to not be nervous, but if you are just true to your own teaching philosophy and if that does line up with Knowles, then it'll just feel right, I think.
Something that I guess suggest that you should focus on is just being your authentic self as a teacher. So whether that is your teaching style, like Zoe said, content knowledge, if you are also involved in something like extracurricular at your school, just being your authentic self, learning all that you can this year. And then when you interview, bring all of that with you. So if there's anything that you can share or anything you want to highlight about yourself, you can use that time. Group interviews are about balance. So knowing where your voice shines more and then where like listening to others will be beneficial. But in your individual interview, I say market yourself. Let us know, us like I'm in an interview, but let whoever's interviewing you know um, things that you do that you think shine.
Thank you. Next question. From your experience, what is it like having a mentor in the context of the fellowship? Specifically, what are the advantages of having a mentor outside of your school community?
I didn't have a mentor. I didn't utilize that. So I will pass on if someone else has more to add.
Yeah, when I think about mentors, I never necessarily had a formal mentor with Knowles, but thinking about my inquiry coaches or any of the staff I worked with, having someone who is outside of your school who doesn't even live in the same state as you, there is something so valuable in that. It's kind of like that idea that like you would only tell a secret to someone who's not your best friend. Like I felt like I could be completely open with all of the staff, the people that were kind of above me to help me get where I'm going. And so just to have someone to bounce ideas off of that doesn't know the people and the stories you're telling, doesn't teach in your school, doesn't have anything to do with your administration. I think it just gives you a really safe space to come up with ideas that are maybe a little bit crazier, more unique or creative than you would have come up with in your own school. So I can't really speak to like a formal mentor, but definitely having all the staff there just to listen and be completely separate from me as a like school teacher, like I was a Knowles teacher in those moments, was really valuable.
Yeah, I also haven't had like a formal like mentor coach, even though that is something you can request through the program. I just haven't done that yet. But the TDs that we have and like the staff at Knowles is just very open. Kind of like the lady said, we can talk to them about anything personal or school related and not feel like, that principal in the building who's like going to see you and then remind you of it every time or, check in or micromanage a concern that you gave them. But it's more of expressing our concerns and then they help us find ways to be better in that field or give us suggestions that may help us with our students. So it is good having somebody who's outside of your building who you can still talk to about school stuff and who still understands what it's like to be an educator, but who can give you a different type of feedback.
Thank you. The next question, what is kind of the structure or what are you focusing on in fellowship meetings?
It changes every year. Uh, I can probably, meaning like every year that you go through the cohort, and I'm sure it's changing that now that the cohort or the fellowship has changed a little bit too. But basically, you come together with a group of teachers who have a common goal of developing their teaching practice. Usually, there's some community building, there's some fun, there's a lot of individual reflection time. Usually, you bring some sort of artifact to a meeting and you discuss that with your colleagues. And there's a pretty structured process discussing it to make sure you stay within like the goal of that discussion or that knowledge generation that's happening. And then you reflect some more. There's meals. There's usually a hotel room involved. Um, a lot of just time to spend with others and commiserate and spread joy and build community. Um, yeah, just in general, that's if I had to like tell someone who's not in the fellowship what it's about, that's what I would say.
I don't really have that was like a perfect description, honestly. That's how I think of meetings as well. The only thing I will add is that I feel like when I went into my first meeting, I thought it was going to be all about talking about our lesson plans and strictly looking at lesson plans and saying, what should I do better? And that is not it. And honestly, I'm really glad that that's not it. And I think my first meeting, I was a little kind of thrown off that that's not what we were doing. But it is really digging deeper into your practice. It's thinking, okay, how can I take what I'm already doing in this lesson plan and make it group worthy? Or how can I figure out what like equitable practices I'm using in my classroom and data can support that. And it is a lot of collaboration. So the working with others, Knowles is gonna like throw you into a million different groups every single meeting. And that's so awesome to get to work with every single person in your cohort in different small groups, and focus on something a little bit different every year, but you truly do get to talk to people in every single content area that teach all around the US, in kind of different situations, which is nice.
Yes, I agree. With everything that you both said, it is really reassuring when you talk to people who teach, like for me, math. So when I talk to other math teachers in our cohort from California and Colorado and where else are we at? Illinois, I mean, all over. But then you talk to them and they have like the same almost like the same students. Like I also have a student who does X, Y, and Z, or I have a group of students who also are not understanding this concept. And it kind of like humbles you to say like it's not me. And it's also not my students. It may just be a universal thing. But then you get to brainstorm with them and trial and error, and then you get to the end and you have success. It's kind of like, okay, I didn't have to do this by myself, but also I can share this with the other teachers who are in my building and let them know that it's not just us either. But then outside of the academic talk, the free time we have, like when we take our breaks or we go on walking talks or our cohort likes to play frisbee outside of the office, and just the like personal connections that you build with people who you probably would have never met if it weren't for Knowles is also like really beneficial. And we talk often in our group meet, just checking in with each other. You see life happening for people, engagements, babies in our cohort already. So I don't know. I love it. When you think about it, like as you're applying and you're like listening to us talk, because I think I'm the most recent one who is here, it almost seems like in one sense like overwhelming, but then also like too good to be true. But it really is a great program.
I just want to add on to Jasmine something you mentioned about like thinking that this problem was just your own problem and that like you are somehow um, the only one that has this thing. I remember coming to my a year 4 meeting with a set of data that I thought was going to show that this thing was true about the students at my school because I work in like a small school and a lot of them have been there since kindergarten, and I was like, this is happening. And I talked to my friend who teaches chemistry in San Diego, and he's like, yeah, same problem. And I'm like, oh. And I think that's like really science. Like that is knowledge generate, like that's what's happening when people do science. Like I figured out this thing. And then you find out that you weren't the only one that discovered that, or that like, oh, this thing is also happening here. And this is the solution that they came up with. And here's another solution. Um, it's a good reminder that like we are all learning still and we don't know what we're doing a lot of the time, and that's okay. So
Thank you. What has been your favorite part of the fellowship, so far, or what was your favorite part?
I can jump in, Zoe, if you need a second to
yeah,
think
you go
this
first. I'm
one.
gonna let you.
I think favorite part of the fellowship outside of just my cohort and like the connections is actually some of the ways that I've used my grant money. So I have been able to go on 2 research trips. So teaching bio, I really wanted to get into the field and do some research. So Knowles was able to kind of allow me to go on 2 separate field trips. I went into Park City, Utah and did some owl research and got to like hold owls at midnight and measure their claws and do all of this really neat stuff. And then I also went to Acadia National Park in Maine and I flew on like a 4-person plane. It was one of the craziest trips I've ever been on, but I was doing climate change research and tide pools. And that was all stuff that Knowles encouraged me to do. They paid for all of it through my professional development money. And that has been some of the most like life-changing, valuable trips I've ever been on. It made me love science even more. It kind of like reminded me why I love science and why I like to teach it. So outside of like actual Knowles people, going on those trips and having the money to do that was very life-changing.
I think my favorite thing so far, I've been thinking I had like 3 things. And then when Mackenzie started talking, I was like, oh yeah, my grant money too. So I will say the funding is very helpful. I teach in a Title I school, and so our resources and like exposure is oftentimes lacking. So being able to buy materials for my students, for them to like model, like recently I bought some, they're called ang legs, if you're a math person. And you can build like angles But then, of course, you can use them to build triangles and then parallelograms. I bought like geo boards, like from elementary, and a lot of things you think are like, oh, we did this in elementary school. The students might not like it. They love them because it gives them a chance to kind of like be a kid again and learn. So, a lot of my money has gone towards the materials, but I've also gone to our South Carolina math teacher conference, and that was good, learning and networking again with other teachers. I've heard about the fellows that take trips, and so I'm trying to figure out how I can get that for math. I'm not really sure what is out there yet, so still looking into that. So that's one thing that I really like about the program is the finances that help when, your school might not have the things that you need. Um, what else is a big thing? I also really like the activities that we share, like the tasks. So when you meet, they're tasks that kind of put you in a learner stance of like being a student again, things that you probably won't know. And it kind of like it really humbles me, especially when I get the science task and I'm like, I have no idea what is going on here. But they are really fun. They kind of like make you think outside of the box, and they have definitely given me ideas that I would try with my students. So the tasks are really big too.
Um, this is going to be really cheesy, but I've made some really great friends that I can trust with all of my school problems ever. I went through like a really tough, like the last year of my fellowship, I was put on a growth plan and at my school, and it was like really unexpected and it was really hard. And I immediately got on a Zoom, like as soon the day after I got my like paper, I was on a Zoom call with like two of the members of my cohort, and we like talked through the whole thing, and they were able to like give me feedback, and like we were able to talk through what things I could do. And it was just like immediately someone was there that wasn't in my direct community, wasn't the people that I see every day, but was somebody that knew who I was as a teacher and was able to be there as a support system and be sort of like a light through that like really tough patch of teaching for me. And luckily everything worked out. So that was great. But I think that having a group of people that I could rely on in that way was really, really valuable. Um, and having the additional support from the Knoll staff and then funding from that from my final year to be able to pay for like what what they call like a wellness coach uh, was really like kept me teaching. I probably wouldn't have returned to the classroom last year without like the Knowles community and the things that Knowles has to offer. And now I'm like very happy and I feel very satisfied with my job and I'm doing really well and everyone's really impressed with me, which is always great. So, um, yeah, I think that's been like my favorite part. Also, everyone is so funny. I love laughing, and it's just so nice to just like be with people that make you laugh.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. That is all of the questions in at the moment. If you guys have any more questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A box at the moment. I will throw one more from me to Zoe. Since you're the only senior fellow here, do you want to talk a little bit about what it means to like branch out and how you can still engage with Knowles?
Yeah. So when you complete the fellowship, you go to this really emotional ceremony, like a graduation ceremony. It doesn't have to be emotional, but it typically is because you spent a long time with these people and now it kind of feels like final. Um, but you don't like leave. I mean, you leave the hotel, you fly back home, but they as in Knowles has really beefed up the senior fellow program, and there's so many different opportunities to just stay engaged with the fellowship. I'm now in my second year post fellowship. In my first year, I took the entire year off. But over the summer, we got an email basically saying, hey, if you want to come to an academy course, which is like professional development that they hosted where summer conference was in Philly, we have spots. So I sent in a little application, hanging out, just, you know, it took 20, 30 minutes. And I got an email back a couple of days later saying, hey, we'd love for you to come. And so I was able to fly to Philly and re-engage in my Knowles work. And when I was there, I was like, this is so cool. I want to do this. And so I'm now starting to become an academy instructor. And which basically means that I'm going to go through a course and then I'm going to learn how to um, introduce this topic, which I'm doing one on math tasks, creating really great math tasks. Basically, I'm learning how to do that or present that to other teachers that may not be in the fellowship, most likely will not be. But that's just like one way to stay engaged. There's so many different ways you can stay engaged. There's opportunities for um, grants that like leadership, I think they're called seed grants for senior fellows, but um, there's additional funding. So if you want to do something really great in your school community, you can write a grant for it. Um, you can apply to present at a national conference, and if you get in, then those will pay for your your travel for that. Um, there's opportunities to write. You can write as a fellow, but you can also write as a senior fellow. And it's blank. There's just so many. There's like so many different ways to engage, really low impact, like responding to an email about what's going on in your classroom. Like that is still engagement. You are still thinking about teaching. But I mean, there's ways to go move on up and just engage yourself in different ways. And it's there forever. For as long as you're in the fellowship, or not fellowship, as long as you're, still engaged in the community. So um yeah, I'm only in year two. I'm sure that uh as I get older in my senior fellowship career, uh I will know more, and I think there'll be more opportunities too. But yeah.
And I would just like to add how Zoe said she took a year off where she didn't really engage with us. And that's fairly common too. We actually recently had some like senior fellows from some of the original cohorts. They haven't really engaged for a couple years, finally just rejoined us at summer conference this year and things. So as much as the fellowship itself is you get what you put into it, so is the senior fellow program when you get that far. All right. So it looks like we don't have any more questions. I'm just going to put up this slide for the last few minutes. So the applications are currently open for the fellowship program. If you scan the QR code here, it'll take you right to the application. If you have any questions about the application process or other things that we weren't able to answer here, you can always email us at apply. The application, we've got a couple of window deadlines. The next one is October 17th. So if you apply by October 17th, you will find out by October 22nd if you've made it to the second round. And the second round is going to be an essay question. So then you'll get from the end of October to January to write an essay. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much to our wonderful fellows for answering all those questions. If you
I have
have
one
any
thing.
questions, oh, sorry.
I just want to say for everybody who's watching, it can be a full circle moment for you because when I applied, was that 2 years ago? Zoe was actually on the panel. Like I came to a meeting, like to a webinar like this, and Zoe was on it. So yes, Zoe doesn't remember because
Yeah, that was like in
she
your,
wouldn't be
no, I
able to
do
see
remember
me.
because
But yeah,
I do remember because it was, I don't think we could see you. Yeah. But I remember because I went to a wedding that evening. It was like during your interview process. You were like at your interviews, like your group interviews or something were happening like over that weekend or something. And I remember coming and
Mhm.
talking there. Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you made
Yeah.
it. Welcome. I hope you've enjoyed your year and a half so far and have fun at
Yes,
your fall meeting.
it's been good. Yeah, I'm excited to go. That's another good
Yeah.
thing. Is travel. Like if you've never gone outside of your state or things like that, getting to travel to the different cities and explore them while also being like immersed in the fellowship is really cool too.
Right. Thank you so much. Have a great night, everyone. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email us.